Hello, my name is Cameron Barnes. I'm a materials engineer in the research department with Bradley Corporation. Today we're going to show you how to do some repairs on Terreon. We got three types. We're going to do a repair of the gouge on an edge of a Terreon sample. We got a deep gouge on the surface, and then we also have some holes that may have inadvertently been drilled, and we're going to show you how to repair something that goes all the way through. In the event you do need to do a repair, what you need to do is order a repair kit like the one I'm holding here. This one is specific to the color that we're going to repair today, which is Empire Gray. And now I'm going to show you what you will receive in the contents. So now we're going to open up the box and show you all the contents inside. So every box, when you open it up, will have all these contents. You will have your pigment, and this will be if you have a color that requires pigment. For this color we do, it's a gray. We also have our resin. This is the liquid that you will use to mix everything in. And then we'll have a matching filler that will give you the pattern that you need for the color. We also have gloves and a popsicle stick for PPE. This is your catalyst to harden your material. Multiple pieces of sandpaper so you can match the finish. And then lastly, we have installation guides and a safety data sheet, or an SDS. The repair process for Terreon is a 4-step process. The first step is prepping and taping your sample. The next is mixing all of your raw materials to create what we call a matrix. The third is applying the matrix into your repair areas. And finally, we're going to sand the repair area so that it mimics its surroundings. So the first step that we want to do is to prepare your surface area. So the first step you want to do is clean your area to make sure there's no oil residue. Then secondly, you want to do some taping. If there is a hole that you need to fill, you want to apply tape underneath so that you have a proper backing so that the matrix will not leak all the way through. If you have an edge, you're going to want to put tape on the side so that you build a dam and the matrix stays in the area that you want to have filled. And I'm going to demonstrate that here. We're using a 1-inch width piece of tape. You pull it off, and then you apply it to the side, leaving enough on the surface so that you have an area to build over the main surface. And then I will do it a second time for stability purposes. So now we're going to do the mixing part of our repair. It's important that we put our proper PPE on. I have my gloves on right now. And it is also imperative that we follow this procedure per the exact repair kit instructions so that we get the correct color for our repair. This color has an optional pigment, so we'll be starting with this tin. If you do not have a pigment, you'll be starting with the resin tin. For this color, we'll be putting the resin into the pigment tin. So we will be emptying the contents of our resin into the pigment, mixing as much as the resin you can get out as possible. You're going to mix this for 1 minute so that everything, pigment and resin-wise, is a uniform and consistent color. To check this, you can lift out your tongue depressor and make sure that there are no streaks in your sample. Once that is consistent, you will then add your hardener. We'll be adding 35 drops. And it is important that you do not put the hardener on the popsicle stick, the tongue depressor. Otherwise, that material will not react with the resin. It will be soaked in the wood, and you will not get a good mixture. You will then mix the mixture for another 1 minute. It is important that you do 1 minute of mixing to make sure that the hardener is evenly dispersed. Otherwise, you will have soft spots that will not cure. Lastly, we're going to add the filler. Again, this is going to give us the pattern that we want. It is usually a white powder, and you can see some of the speckles of white and black for our Empire Gray color here. You're going to put all the contents, as much as you can, into the container. Then you're going to mix this final mixture, which we call matrix, for approximately 1 minute until it is fully consistent. You want to make sure that you mix thoroughly through all the edges so that you do not get any dry spots of filler that did not get mixed. Now I'll pull my tongue depressor out, and you can see that the color is approximately what we would want for this Empire Gray patch. So now we're going to fill our repair areas. What I did was I broke my popsicle stick in half so that I have a finer point to pinpoint where I want to fill my matrix. So I will take a little bit of a scoop, and I'm going to put it right into the repair area. And it is important to fill with a little bit of an extra bead on top, because we want to make sure that we get a full fill. And also, we want to make sure that when we sand this back down, that we expose all of the white and black stones in this Empire Gray color. And then next I will do this surface gouge. And it is important to make sure that the reason why I use a sharp pointing tool is to make sure you get the matrix down into the depths of your repair. You can also agitate it, like how I'm doing, so you make sure that there is no porosity or air bubbles in your repair. Back to that. And notice how the color is fairly consistent with what we're repairing on. Lastly, we're going to fill our hole. So with the bigger hole, I'm going to switch back to my bigger tongue depressor, and we're going to place it in the middle. Again, agitating it so that there's no bubbles or porosity. It is okay if you have a little bit of sloppiness or drips like I have here that can be easily wiped off and removed once you're done filling your repair. So again, notice that I have it, the matrix level pretty close to the surface. I'm going to add a little bit more just to make sure that we have a nice bead on top and that we don't have a resin-rich surface that you will notice the repair. We're going to sand right through that and we'll have a nice exposure. Now that we have our repair areas filled, we will need to wait approximately 1.5 to 4 hours for the repair material to achieve a proper green strength. You'll also need to wait approximately 24 hours for the repair to achieve a full cure. Okay, so now we've let our matrix cure, hopefully up to 24 hours, and this is what it should look like once it's solidified. What we're going to do to make sure that it's solid enough and ready to be sanded is we're going to try and take a piece of a tongue depressor and apply some pressure to see if we can create any imprints. As you can see, we're not getting any sort of indents, so this should be good to sand. Another thing I'd like to point out is if you see this, this hole that we did, you can see a little bit of recess in the middle, or a little dip, and that's because of the mass of the matrix. It causes it to shrink, so that's why it was very important to overfill and make sure that we have still enough material to sand away. So the final step we're going to do is the sanding to make sure everything looks nice and uniform. We have 3 steps that we're going to do. We start with the coarsest, which is 80 grit. Then we'll proceed to a medium grit, which is 120. And then lastly, to match the matte finish, we're going to do a 220 grit. So now we're going to start sanding the edge repair. And we move the sample over to the edge of this board so that it more realistically mimics what you'd see in the field. You can see I already started sanding down the repair, and what we're going to do is move it back and forth just like you were sanding anything else, and you're going to move it in parallel with the edge so that you can more closely mimic the curvature. And it is okay if you sand the area surrounding the repair because you want it to blend in. So you want it to be as perfect as possible. So now you can see we took off all the excess of our repair, and now you see all the scratches from that 80 grit. So the remainder of the steps, we're going to be trying to remove all those scratches and blend it in with the surrounding area. So now we move to our 120 grit medium sandpaper, and we're going to do the same application using a little bit lighter pressure so that we don't take away too much of the material. And you're trying to go in a couple of different directions to try again, remove all of those scratches. So now you can see I made new scratches going the other direction. So that's what we'll remove in the next step. And finally, our last step is going to be with the 220 grit sandpaper. And what we're going to make sure we do importantly on this step is to randomize our direction. We want to make sure that we do circles, some directions, just to make sure that we randomize our sand scratches. And that way, they will be hard to see and it will mimic exactly what is around the surroundings. You should blend in around a further area to make sure that we don't isolate just the repair area. And then when we're done, we'll wipe it off and then take a wet paper towel and wipe off the surface, all the dust. And then you should be able to see your perfectly repaired Terreon. Okay. So now we're going to demonstrate how to sand down the flat surface repairs. We're going to do the long gouge first. And same as before, you just want to sand in one direction to remove all that excess material that you built up. And you want to make sure that you don't take too much off or else you're going to create a hole right where you just started filling. So you can see I'm getting a little close, but I still have a little bit of raise there. One thing to make sure that you are sanding this nice and even is you can use a sanding block or a piece of wood, something else that is a sturdier backbone, so that you make sure that you're sanding everything in a nice even manner. So now that you see, like when I sand back and forth here, now that I'm even, you can see the dust is nice and smooth over everything. There's no little nook and cranny that is getting underneath. So that's how you can tell when that one's done. Now I'm going to go to the bigger one, and same thing, it's just a little bit bigger, a little more strength that you need to push down. So again, you can see that there's a little bit of buildup in this nook where all the sand and dust is getting. So that's how you can tell that there's still a little bit more you need to put down. So now we're going to move to our middle step, the 120 grip. We're going to start with the long gouge, and then we're going to move on to the large hole. Again, we're going to try and go in a different direction so that we can sand out the large scratches from the previous step. And lastly, we're going to do the 220 and final grit to match the matte finish behind. And again, we're going to go in circles in one direction to randomize the sanding. And then once we're done, again, we'll get a wet paper towel, wipe off the surface, and we should have a perfectly finished Terreon piece. So now that we're all done, we'll just recap. You can see at the edge repair, this is what we started out with, and this is what we repaired. We have a surface gouge that started here, and now this is our repair. And then lastly, with the holes, we started with a hole similar to this, and now we see our hole finished and repaired right there.